One thing he just reminded me was 1978 approximately. He heard me speak in Southern California, and my lecture was for 5.5 hours. Ladies and gentlemen, let the coffee roll. You will need it. Anyway, I just got off the plane this morning from London, so I'm a little casual. Hope you forgive me. That also means that I didn't sleep much at all on the plane, having to prepare, among other things, for today's lunch. And so if I fall asleep right here, I've known to fall asleep on stage. It will not be the first time, so please forgive me. But anyway, I'm delighted to be invited by the Hong Kong Trade Development Council as well as the Federation of Hong Kong Business Associations Worldwide. I don't think this is the first time I've spoken for you. I think it may be the second. It's a great honor to be invited back. I just find it interesting that you should ask me to talk about Hong Kong and Shanghai. I said, what does that have to do with Hong Kong? Why talk about Shanghai and Hong Kong? So I thought that I'll begin with a survey, if I may. Please be honest, okay? Many of you, I was told by Alan, my good friend, that many of you who are members overseas, in particular in Canada, US, and Europe, are not from Hong Kong. I'm just wondering, how many of you have businesses in Shanghai as well, besides Hong Kong? Please raise your hands. If you have business in Shanghai. Okay, as you can see, at least probably, over half have businesses in Shanghai. And the fact that the organizer wanted to talk about Hong Kong and Shanghai must mean something. What does it mean? I'm not sure. I will come to it towards the end of my talk. A lot of people in Hong Kong are very worried about the losing of competitive edge to Shanghai. I say, well, anyway, I'll come to that conclusion later. Let's get some facts right first. It's obvious that Shanghai started at a very low base. I never forget my first trip to Shanghai in the early 80s. Got off the airplane in the middle of the night, and there's no bus, no taxi. It was just one car that is supposed to go somewhere. I have no idea where it went. My wife and I, with our luggage, got on there, and we were dumped in the middle of nowhere. And it was 9 o'clock, and there was no light, no street light. That was only 25 years ago, roughly? And eventually, thank God, I bought a map at the airport. And I look at the map and find out where the closest hotel was, and that was Jinjiang Hotel. So my wife and I lugged our luggage and walked for, 15 minutes to Jinjiang, and then I said, Barbara, would you sit there here and wait? I'll go check in. Well, they look at me, look at my Hong Kong passport, they say, no room. So where am I going to lug my luggage to next, right? That's Shanghai, 25, 30 years ago. Eventually, in my brilliance, a moment of brilliance, everyone is allowed a little bit of that once in a while. My wife has a US passport. So I said, Barbara, give me your passport. So still me, not my wife. I took my wife's American passport. I walk over to the counter, the same guy. I said, can I have a room? Yes, sir. Please wait. That was not that long ago. So Shanghai started at a low base. No wonder they grow so fast. And don't forget that, only 15 years ago, a lot that we see today were not there in Shanghai. And Shanghai has really only been growing for less than 20 years, realistically. Whereas Hong Kong, on the other hand, has been growing, if you count from Second World War, close to 65 years. So we are a mature person here in Hong Kong, and Shanghai is still a young man or a young lady, and no wonder they grow a little bit faster. Hong Kong also, by virtue of the fact that we've been growing for 40, 50 years at least, our per capita income has reached $32,000 US. And we all know that any economy, once the per capita GDP goes to 25,000 or thereabouts, it slows down. So I suppose this is not surprising that Hong Kong should grow a little slower. The only question is this. My only question is, hey, we're now part of China. And China is growing at in the last 12 years since Hong Kong's return to the mainland of China, growing at 9-10%? So why should we not grow at least close to 9-10%? Or shall I put it another way? That potentially, Hong Kong now being part of China, and having a lot of special advantages, as I will mention later, Hong Kong should be growing at, if not 8, 9, 10%, how about 7%? I think it is reasonable given the objective facts of Hong Kong in relation to mainland of China, that Hong Kong should grow at a very much faster pace than what we are achieving of late. Why is that the case? Why are we not doing so? I will analyze it later. So let me just very simply, I know I only have 15 minutes, so I would just present a few analyses in several dimensions, and I categorize them into 4 categories. The first are the areas where Hong Kong still has a distinct advantage over the mainland of China, including Shanghai. The second area is the areas where Shanghai is catching up very fast. The third one is where Shanghai has already surpassed Hong Kong. And finally, what are some of the critical issues, perhaps 2 or 3 critical issues in the coming, that in the coming few years will be significant and important, that will impact on the relationship between Hong Kong and China. So let me begin with those areas where Hong Kong has a distinct advantage. First one, freedom of information. My son works in Shanghai. I go there a lot. The free flow of information in Hong Kong is just unlike anywhere in the mainland of China, including Shanghai. Second one, we have the rule of law. You all know that. Number 3, we have a very, very clean government. I hate to say that Shanghai is not clean, but nonetheless, I like to think that Hong Kong is very, very clean. Next one. Hong Kong has a taxation system that is truly amazing. Barry, you are a tax expert. You used to live in Hong Kong. You know how it is. Not only is it low, it's simple, right? The rate is low, right? It's probably the best in the world, right? So now, look at all these things. All those things I have just mentioned are not easily replicable in Shanghai or anywhere else in the mainland of China. Freedom of information, the rule of law. You cannot have a different law in Shanghai. Theoretically, you can. You can have another special administrative region, a special administrative region, I suppose. But I don't think that that's going to be the case. And hence, you can really, realistically, not have a different law in Shanghai than the rest of mainland China. Whether the government will continue to get cleaner and cleaner, I think so, in Shanghai and as in the rest of mainland China. But it would take time. But as far as the tax is concerned, again, theoretically, you can always have a special tax regime in one city, and China has been known to have done that. But that is in the early 90s, in the late 80s. But in today's day and age, I don't think that Shanghai will be able to achieve that. So all those things I've just listed, Hong Kong is really unique, and it is not something that Shanghai or anyone else in the mainland of China can replicate anytime soon. Not to mention that our financial service is excellent. We're one of the best in the world, I like to think, in terms of the maturity of our market, the credibility, the transparency, the transaction cost, the product diversity, right? A lot of these things, again, Hong Kong is certainly superior. Then finally, one area is the use of English is probably still a little bit better in Hong Kong, although that is one area that Shanghai is catching up fast. But suffice to say that with all those things I have listed, I think many of them, the critical ones, are not something that can be easily replicable in the mainland of China. Now let me turn to the area where Shanghai is catching up very fast. First of all, the overall GDP of Shanghai and Hong Kong are very, very close to each other. If Hong Kong grows at 4% this year, and if Shanghai grows at 8.5%, then by the end of 2010, end of next year, the absolute amount of Hong Kong GDP and Shanghai GDP will basically be both the same, approximately $233 billion US. Of course, on a per capita basis, Hong Kong is still way ahead. We're about three times that of Shanghai. And if again using the number I used, that is Shanghai growing at 8.5% per annum and Hong Kong growing at 4%, I don't know if you think it's reasonable, Alan. You have a better judge than I do. I see your chief economist here. But anyway, if those numbers are reasonable, then it would take another 25 years for Shanghai to catch up. That is approximately in 2034, that Shanghai would have the same per capita GDP as Hong Kong. Now, obviously, those assumptions are very dicey, and I don't think that anything in the economic world grow in straight lines. But nonetheless, just to give you some idea of the comparison. Then, another area where I think Shanghai and Hong Kong are about the same, and that is the hinterland that we have or they have. Hong Kong has Pearl River Delta. They have the Yangtze River Delta. Now, obviously, the Pearl River Delta developed first, and hence we have a head start over them. So perhaps in terms of absolute size, we may still be bigger. But the fact that they started later might mean that they have an advantage of having leapfrogging over us. In terms of technology, certainly the Yangtze River Delta area is no worse than the Pearl River Delta area. And indeed, the party secretary of Guangdong, Wang Yang, Mr. Wang Yang, has in the last year or two, have been basically chasing away a lot of the lower value-added factories to the rest of Guangdong, if not the rest of the country. And all that means that they are undergoing, the Pearl River Delta is undergoing a technological upgrading, which then means that the future is a little uncertain. So they're in where Shanghai and Hong Kong are about the same, that is, in terms of its hinterland. Look at another one. Look at the number of headquarters. The regional headquarters in the old days, all of them, anybody who was interested in doing business in China, mainland China, would come to Hong Kong. But I think we all know, increasingly, a lot of them have been moving to Shanghai, and indeed, perhaps even more have moved to Beijing. But whether it's Beijing or Shanghai, some of them have been moving out of Hong Kong. But on the other hand, having said that, I think we have also had many new companies in the last 10 years, since 1997, that have moved into Hong Kong. So we are not losing ground. It is just, we're not losing ground in absolute terms. It is just that relative to Shanghai, they have been catching up a little bit. The next one is human resource. Herein, I think, is another area where Shanghai is catching up very fast. I think a lot of us like to think that Hong Kong, for the last many decades, are way ahead of Shanghai. But the speed and the growth rate with which Shanghai has been grown is truly amazing. And many of the people now are, frankly, moving from Hong Kong to Shanghai. And I see nothing wrong with that. If there's a weather opportunity, so be it. You know, recently, I'm also the convener of a thing called the Hong Kong Development Forum. Dr. K.B. Chan here attends our programs. Many of you attends our program regularly. Andrew Leung, our legislative counselor, great to have you here. There we had a seminar one time on comparing Hong Kong and Shanghai. And the amazing thing is this. The amazing thing is this. One of the speakers was from was the chairman of one of the major international investment bank, and he lives in Hong Kong, and he's been living here for the last 15 years or so. 3 months after that seminar, I was on a plane from the mainland of China back to Hong Kong. So I said, "Hey, going home, huh?" He said, "No, I'm going there for work." He has himself moved to the mainland of China. So you can see that a lot of very talented people are now moving out of Hong Kong. Again, the fortunate thing is that we have a good stream of newcomers from the rest of the world, thanks partly to the Federation of Hong Kong Business Association worldwide. A lot of companies are also moving to Hong Kong and bringing with it many, many talents. But nonetheless, I think overall, it is fair to say that Shanghai is catching up in relative terms. Then finally, I think in terms of tourism, Hong Kong in the past is fantastic. We still are very good. But Shanghai, I remember looking at those numbers a while ago. Shanghai has what? Hong Kong has what? 28 million or whatever. And Shanghai has something like 4 or 5. But, we boasted about Disneyland and this and that. And now, bingo, they're going to have them themselves. And by the way, I really don't like the fact, I don't know if it's true, Alan. I read that they are purposely making the Disneyland in Shanghai smaller, so as not to overtake Hong Kong. I said, we Hong Kong people ought to be self-confident. So what? If it is good for Shanghai, let it be big. Why not? There's 1.3 billion people in the mainland of China. There's plenty to go around. Go to Shanghai, come to Hong Kong. In fact, I think Hong Kong is just too small, and that's our problem. Let's not export our problem to Shanghai. But anyway, if I have no say in any of that stuff, but if I have my say, I say, hey, Shanghai, go ahead, build as big as you want. As long as the market will bear, so be it. But anyway, suffice to say that in terms of tourism, I think Shanghai is also doing quite well. Then now let me turn to my third topic. That is, there are areas where Shanghai has already overtaken Hong Kong. Let me just give you a few. The stock exchange of Hong Kong, in terms of market cap, in the last 2 years or so, Shanghai is about, 10 to 15% bigger than ours? I happened to bump into Paul Chow, the chief executive of the former chief executive of the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, on the flight home this morning. So I show him the numbers. I said, hey, is that correct? And he pointed out something very interesting to me. He said, oh, yes, it's correct. You know, they are about 10-15% bigger. But then they count the A shares, which is 80 to 85% of those huge SOEs, whereas Hong Kong only count the X share, which is 15 to 20%, right? And so he said, once the renminbi is convertible, then we will count the whole thing, in which case Hong Kong will be far bigger than them because they count 85% of those huge SOEs. We only count 15%. We're already almost as big as they are. But anyway, it doesn't matter. But in terms of the turnover, they are a lot bigger. As much as twice, sometimes even more, the turnover of Hong Kong. And of course, then I have my explanation for that. You know, their market is less mature. Our market is basically institutional market, whereas their market, there's still a lot of retailer. It reminds me of 1970s and 80s, when I used to be, you know, in Hong Kong, where we didn't used to have these screens that you look at. You have to go to Wortley in those days in Hong Kong Bank in order to look at the machine. And those were the days when all the retailers, speculators mainly, are playing and mucking around in the market. And Shanghai, well, that's the kind of market they are. So be it. Another area where they are overtaking us is the airport. Hong Kong has 48 million passengers last year. How many did Shanghai have? Well, you say Pudong has only 28. But you have to count Hongqiao, which is another 23. So when you add the two together, they have about 51 million people, passengers per annum. And as you know, the Hongqiao airport is now being renewed and enlarged. And with so many mainland Chinese traveling these days, it's not surprising that they should overtake us. Perhaps a little bit more worrying is the fact that even the container terminal, they're overtaking us in terms of the throughput. Then finally, the ultimate thing that Shanghai has an advantage over us is the government. I'm not complaining about the Hong Kong government. It's just a different kind of government, right? Ours is a small government. And I thought to myself this morning as I was thinking about this on the plane, I said, hey, you know, of all those senior government officials in the Hong Kong government that carry over from pre-1997, of all people, our President Chief Executive Donald Tsang, very capable of course, is the most free market, which means small government, right? And our government is, I'm proud of it, quite small. But Shanghai's government is very big and very powerful. Now, is that good or is that bad? In the long run, I think a small government, I like a smaller government. But in the short run, if they get it right, as they have been doing in the last 30 years or so, then they can be extremely efficient, right? And that has been the case. Many of us have been doing business in Shanghai for the last 20 years or so. We've been watching that. They're big government, yeah, big as it may be, but they are very, very effective and very, very wise in their decisions. And so it is not fair, in a sense, to compare, you know, our government to theirs. It's just a different kind of government. And as I will come back later, we have some problem that is outside of the government. Our problem is not so much in the government. Our problem is more outside of the government. But anyway, so I think that is an area where ultimately Shanghai really has an advantage over us, at least in the coming decade or two. And finally, and I will start with these 2 points, that is, there are two elements, the effects of which will have a long-lasting effect on both Hong Kong and Shanghai. The first one being what will happen after the currency renminbi is freely convertible on a capital account basis. I don't think that it will happen. Personally, anybody's guess. I have no inside information. I don't think, if you would ask me to guess, to bet on it, I would say probably not within the next 5 or 10 years. I would doubt if it would open up in the next 5 or 10 years. But whatever it is, eventually it probably will. And when it does, what will happen to Hong Kong? So a lot of people say, Hong Kong will lose its position. I said, no. If China has the confidence to open up its capital account for the renminbi, that means China is growing very, very well, such that the top leaders have the confidence to open up the renminbi, right? That means, ladies and gentlemen, so much money will be flowing from the mainland of China. If nothing else, just look at one industry, one segment of industry. How about the private wealth management? There are some bankers out there, I assume, right? If you're a private banker, don't leave Hong Kong until they open the RMB, right? Because imagine the amount of wealth. Do you know how much money there is in mainland China? 2 point some trillion US dollars in private saving. Sorry, I got it wrong. 2.2 trillion in foreign reserve. 3 point some trillion in private saving. About 4 trillion US dollars. These are all US dollars, huh? 4 trillion US dollars in the corporate savings. And once that money begin to flow into Hong Kong, ladies and gentlemen, are we ready for it? And by the way, I'm in the real estate, right? How about high-end residential? Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, I will be a very wealthy man. You let those mainland Chinese guys who come to Hong Kong to buy property, they're not going to buy those mass residential. Come on, right? These guys are going to buy the most expensive, and I've seen them, right? And they be cash, not even a mortgage. I love them. So if the RMB is ever convertible on a capital account basis, then I will say Hong Kong will boom like hell. Now, Shanghai will boom too. But that's Shanghai. That's my son. That's the future. But for me, sitting in Hong Kong, I'll be a very, very happy man. Another one is, what is the central government's view about Hong Kong versus Shanghai? The answer is, take away the word versus. They don't say Hong Kong versus Shanghai. They don't think in those terms, I don't believe. They think in terms of Hong Kong and Shanghai, right? And if that is the case, then I would say, I don't believe that the mainland Chinese government is bent on disadvantaging Hong Kong in favor of Shanghai. I don't believe so. In fact, they are bending backwards to help Hong Kong. It is just a matter of the need of the country on an overall basis. What is best for the country in the longer run. And hence, they developed Shanghai the way it ought to be, including being an international financial center. And Hong Kong, they will take advantage of it as long as we in Hong Kong will let China, mainland China, benefit from our presence. So my concluding remark is this. Just a few words for Hong Kong and perhaps a few words for Shanghai. My word for Hong Kong, ladies and gentlemen, is the following. Don't lose self-confidence. There's no reason to, and there's no need to. You know, I have been studying India quite a bit. And so I've been invited in the last couple of years to speak a lot on China versus India. And I always tell people, you know, when you ask a Chinese about India, people say, what about India? They don't care. They don't give a damn. Oh, we grow well. Hey, you go ahead, grow, right? Why not? But you go to India, as I do. I go there once a year, if not 2 or 3 times a year. You talk to anybody, both in the public sector and in the private sector, especially government officials. You talk to them about China, man, they jump. The mention of China just somehow has this effect on them. They are so sensitive. Why? And I told them, I said, that is a sign of your lack of self-confidence. Why should we in Hong Kong talk about Shanghai? Let Shanghai grow. The better, the faster, the better. We will grow too. Don't talk about Shanghai. So I hope, ladies and gentlemen, TDC, don't invite me back to talk about Hong Kong and Shanghai, will you? As a Hong Kong guy, I'm not sensitive about Shanghai. I don't need to be sensitive about Shanghai. Hey, I'm a self-confident guy, okay? Let them grow. Why not? One country anyway. And if they grow well, that means the whole of China is doing well, then we will do well. So let us keep some self-confidence. It's good for us. We all know that, you know, 2 young men with the same IQ, one that have the self-confidence versus another one that doesn't. The one who has the self-confidence will outperform the other one by miles. Even if the other guy without self-confidence has a much higher IQ. I think history tells us that. The guy with the self-confidence, even with a lower IQ, will succeed much better than the other guy. So my word to Hong Kong, first of all, is we're okay. How can we be bad with mainland China growing at 8, 9, 10% just north of the border? And we being the closest in proximity, in culture, in language, in history, in experience, in everything. If everybody else under the sun is making, including all of you, ladies and gentlemen, from Canada, America, Europe, you are making money in the mainland of China. If you make $1 in the mainland of China, I should be making 5 because I'm in Hong Kong. Right? So let's maintain some self-confidence. After all, Hong Kong should not worry about Shanghai. I never look at Shanghai in a competitive terms. Rather, we should worry about ourselves. Are we growing? Or are we growing as fast as we can? I mentioned earlier that if mainland China, all the cities are growing at 8, 9, 10, 12%, right? Many of the cities in which Hang Seng, my company, invested are growing at 14%. In Hong Kong, why should we be growing at 3, 4%? Given our advantage, the many advantages, given our proximity, we, as part of mainland China, as part of China, should be growing, if not at 8, 10%, at least at 7, 8%. The problem is, internally, we have changed in the last 12 years. A lot of people say it is to the better. I say, yeah, many things we have changed to the better. But a few things, it worries me. Hong Kong is no longer as much an economic city as it once was. Politics is now playing a much bigger role. You say it is inevitable. I do not disagree. But let us make sure that the petty politics that is being played in Hong Kong. Sorry, Andrew, our legislative councillor. I really truly feel sorry for you. You have to deal with them every day. Let's make sure that we don't let the petty politics, little small politics. And by the way, that's exactly how Beijing look at us. Just nothing more than dinky little petty politics. Let us make sure that that petty politics does not impede our growth too much. If we don't grow at 7%, let's grow at 6%. If we don't grow at 6%, at least 5% or no less. There's no reason under the sun that we should not do better. So don't worry about Shanghai. Worry about ourselves. We take care of our house, take care of our own internal situation, then we'll be able to take advantage of the opportunity that is presented to both Shanghai and Hong Kong. As to Shanghai, I would say aim high. Sky is the limit. There are not many cities in the whole of China that is like Shanghai. I always tell people, I said, you know, as far as I'm concerned, there are only 2 cities in the whole world that are truly global world cities. New York and London. I won't go into detail. I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. But there are 3 or 4 that are sub-world class. Hong Kong, Shanghai, Paris maybe. There's only, again, 3 or 4. And Shanghai and Hong Kong are 2 of the very, very unique places. You know, some cities you go to, I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody. I come from Los Angeles. I spent 16 years. Los Angeles is, I'm sorry, Chris Liu, you're from Los Angeles. Los Angeles is clinical. It has no taste. I'm sorry, the police commissioner, senior commissioner from the county of Los Angeles here, I apologize, Mr. Chung. Anybody from Singapore? I love Singapore, by the way. I have a home there. I go to sleep there on a weekend with my wife. And that place is clinical. It's very clean. So clean that it's clinical like a hospital, right? It's no taste. But Hong Kong has taste, and Shanghai has taste. So let us develop Shanghai. Go for it. Sky is your limit. And a lot of people say, hey, you need to improve your software. I say, true. We all know that. But I would say, Shanghai, you need to improve your hardware as well, not just your software. The software you will improve. Your human resource you will improve. But the hardware, once you build a building, once you build a highway, once you build an airport, once you build a water treatment plant, you don't tear them down in 5, 10, 20 years. So if your hardware is not built right, you're stuck with it. And you will underestimate your own growth. And Shanghai should not do that. So at the end of the day, I think that I'm an optimist. Hong Kong will do well. Shanghai will do well. China is big enough. 1.3 billion people. You know, if you were to ask me, what is the biggest business opportunity in the 20th century? I would say it's between 1890 and 1917 in the United States. Those were the days, go west, my son, go west. Right? Those were the days when the noonday gun, a shot is heard at noontime in Oklahoma, and you go west, and whatever land you see, that's yours. Plenty of opportunity to go around. The second best opportunity is probably the post-World War II rebuilding, right? And then thirdly, maybe the 1980s with the technology after the fall of the Soviet Union. But the best opportunity, I believe, is in the first decade or two of the 20th century. What is the best economic opportunity in the whole wide world in this century? Although the century is only, what, 9% gone, I'm pretty sure that the best opportunity, the biggest opportunity, will be the mainland of China. It is so big that there's plenty of room for Hong Kong, plenty of room for Shanghai, and if we don't grow, we have no one to blame but ourselves. So ladies and gentlemen, especially you, all of you, like me from Hong Kong, let us make sure that we fix our own house so that we take full advantage of the huge opportunity that is ahead of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ronnie. Now we are opening up the floor for questions. And please ask questions, not give comments. Okay? Please ask questions. I guess the first question...
Stops anybody from criticizing me. Thank you very much.
Well, I guess I get to ask the first question. Given our future is really the young people, could you comment a little bit about the education for young people in Hong Kong, please?
Well, I think that in the old days, well, by that I mean only about 5-7 years ago, Andrew, that Hong Kong universities, thanks to your colleagues, not you, I know that, Andrew, but your colleagues, keep saying, why should we be paying Hong Kong people's tax money? Not that they themselves pay tax. You know, a very small percentage of Hong Kong people pay tax. I feel very proud. I'm really good because I pay a lot of tax. Right? Those guys who don't pay tax are saying, why should we use the taxpayers' money to train mainland students in our universities? I said, I cannot think of dumber people. I cannot think of more small-hearted and short-sighted people. Look at Singapore. They bring the top people from all over mainland of China to the extent that they can be attracted to Singapore, that little country. They attract them there, and then they have a empathy, a sense of belonging to Singapore. And eventually, even if they leave and go back to the mainland of China, they would have a good feeling about Singapore. And the competitiveness, the competition today is really with human resource at the end of the day. And we should attract all the top talents of the mainland of China to Hong Kong. I think Hong Kong really has 2 or 3 industries that are really world-class. One is financial service, right? The other is our tourism. But I think there's another one that few people talk about. That is our tertiary education. Hong Kong has the best universities in the whole of Asia. Let's take advantage of it. Let's be smart. Let's leave those legislators who are short-sighted and foolish. Right, Andrew? Make sure that is shut them up there. And let's bring the best talents, not just from the mainland of China, but everywhere. Bring them to Hong Kong. And it will only benefit Hong Kong in the longer run.
Over there, please.
Thank you for the excellent talk. Having been back to Hong Kong for some years, this is the best talk come from a very eminent entrepreneur for a long, long time. Actually, if I could say, you missed one very important fact you have not mentioned in Shanghai for next year. I'm surprised. This is the World Expo. How would Hong Kong would benefit from the World Expo in Shanghai next year to take the full advantage of the world visitors, both entrepreneurs, students, and people like me, an old person, go to Shanghai, then I come to Hong Kong to see Hong Kong, how wonderful it is. Thank you.
Well, you know, I'm a little dumb guy. I cannot walk and chew gum at the same time. I'm sort of like Gerald Ford. And I look at the long term, and I tend to not look at the short term because it's transient. To me, Expo is a wonderful thing. Let it be. It will feature Shanghai to the rest of the world, and rightly so. Why not? But I don't think that, you know, that is something that is a systemic issue that is going to have a long-lasting effect, and certainly not for Hong Kong. Because let's face it, a lot of people are not flying through Hong Kong anymore. People are flying directly to Shanghai, to Beijing, from North America, from Europe, and so forth. And that is, you know, Mao Zedong said something right. You know, he said that when the sky wants to rain, you cannot stop it. And there are some things that you just cannot stop. And that is, for example, the marching forward, the growth of an economy such as Shanghai, you cannot stop. So may as well not try to just roll with the punches and take advantage of the opportunity that it presents and take advantage of it yourself. And so, you know, to me, I'm sorry if I have a different view. I am not that crazy about, you know, the Beijing Olympics, you know, the expo. I go there because it's just fun, right? But I don't think that it has a long-lasting effect.
Over there, please.
Thank you for a very inspiring speech, Mr. Chan. I have a question about the roles of Europe and the US. What will be their role next to booming China during the next few decades? How do you see it?
You know, what I said to Hong Kong, I say to the United States. That is, there's no reason for the United States to lose self-confidence either. The U.S. is still not just the biggest, but the most resilient. And in terms of the fundamentals, such as science and technology, such as basic research, such as university, right, such as corporate governance, such as many other areas, I think the United States, no one can catch up with them for a long time to come. The only sad thing is, like Hong Kong, they are losing some self-confidence in face of China. But providing that they do as what I have prescribed for Hong Kong, that is not losing self-confidence, then I would say, just like the rest of the world, the United States is staring at the biggest economic opportunity there is in mankind for the whole of the 21st century. Take advantage of it. What about Europe? I would say, perhaps even better. Europe's problem is not China, nor America. Europe's problem is Europe. That is, you're so engulfed in your own problem, the EU's problem. Whereas, from China's perspective, they don't want to rely just on the United States. They would much rather diversify their trade relationship, right? So now, China's trade with EU is bigger than that, than with the United States. Which means that there are plenty of opportunities to play. Whenever a banking license is given, or insurance license company is given, the Chinese are very careful. They always balance 2 American companies and 2 European companies or some such, right? That means that China is looking to Europe. China is open to doing more business with Europe. And why not? Again, well, the difference is that whereas with the United States, it's the losing of self-confidence somewhat vis-a-vis China. Europe is just too engulfed with yourself. So I think, but that's the politicians. I just hope that you, ladies and gentlemen, who are the business persons from Europe, will not get caught up in the politics and come to China. There's a lot of money to be made here. Let's make it together.
Any more questions? No more questions? Over here. The question is, if you have money, just buy one property, which one will you buy, Hong Kong or Shanghai?
In Hong Kong, unless you buy from Hang Lung, otherwise I would say buy in Shanghai. No, I think it's quite simple. That is, the most expensive in Hong Kong are selling roughly at 40,000 Hong Kong dollars a square foot, right? Whereas in the mainland of China, the most expensive, you're really talking no more than $10,000 instead of 40,000. And given the growth rate that they have, 9% per annum, whereas Hong Kong is at 4%, I suppose Shanghai overall must be good. But if you were to buy in Hong Kong, I suggest you buy, of course, Hang Lung better, but the high end, the luxury apartments. Because if the mainland China ever allow some of the people to come to Hong Kong to buy, you don't want to buy 1 unit, you want to buy 10, and then you can sell 9 of them and keep one for yourself. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.